Okay, wonderful. It looks like we have a sufficient number to now have a quorum. Okay, now that we have a quorum, let's go ahead and get started. I will call to order the City of Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for January 21st. It is now 5:10 p.m. If we could please have a roll call.
Mr. Castillo. Mr. Coos.
Here.
Ms. Chazelle. Ms. Grayling.
Yes.
Ms. Peters.
Here.
And Chairperson Charnett.
Present. Okay, do we have any public comment? Okay, no public comment. Then let's go ahead and move on to the minutes. Do we have anyone who had any comments on the minutes?
Do you want me to start?
Be my guest.
Okay. Let's go to page 2. I noticed there were 2 or 3 times when everybody else was Ms. or Mr. or chairperson, whatever, and we ended up using Ms. Peters' first name. I don't know, to keep it all the same, do you want me to say delete those where they show up?
Yeah, I think consistency makes sense, sure.
Okay, so then underneath minutes on page 2 of the draft, we need to get rid of Ms. Peters' first name there. So that would be on the 3rd line under the 2nd paragraph. Okay. And the next place to be looked at is down on the last paragraph of that page, where it talks about mentioning that the board's task is determining. And I'm thinking if they're talking about us, that's a commission. So I think it should say the commission's task is to determine whether the property is eligible for a historic designation. Okay. All right, next page. Nothing. So then we go to page 4, and again, down in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th paragraph, we have Ms. Peters with her first name included, which I don't think is necessary if we're going to keep it the same. And we go on to page 5, and that one, the second full paragraph on that page, let's see, it starts to talk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 8th line, talking about specific requirements for whatever use occupies the building. And then it says, Ms. Simpson stated that a recommendation from the commissions regarding parking can be included in their final report. So are we talking about all the boards and commissions that are finally going to weigh in on all of this, or is it our commission? And if it's just our commission, then it should say from the commission '(S).
It would actually, I think, simply be singular. Ms. Simpson stated that a report, Mr. O'Derno, okay. Ms. Simpson stated that a recommendation from the commission regarding parking.
Okay.
It wouldn't have a possessive.
Okay, so anyway, but it's only our commission that we're talking about and not trying to talk about whatever happens with other boards, commissions, other governing entities, all of that, right?
That was my understanding of it.
Okay, So I didn't know whether it was, whether it be
Yeah.
recommendation, from the commission's report. So I didn't know what the deal is. So, okay, so we'll just have the commission and get rid of the S. All right, so that's that. And then, and the last part of that paragraph, the determination of alternative accommodations would fall to other, and I'm going to say governmental entities rather than boards, because it could be boards, commissions, whatever. What do you think?
I would concur with that.
Okay, okay. Then the last page would be page 6. And again, we are down to the last two places where we have Ms. Peters, and that would be under new business and under the adjournment, where we probably should just say Ms. Peters in both of those. And that's what I've got.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no other items for the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I so moved. Let Greg do it. That's okay.
Okay, we'll have Greg as motion, and Sherry, you can be second here.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we'll have a vote, please.
Mr. Coos,
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Grayling,
Yes.
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
and Chairperson Charnett.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on with our regular agenda. We talked last time, and now we are continuing the conversation here about BHP 2819, action on a resolution to report to the Planning Commission on a petition submitted by the Franklin Park Foundation for the nomination and historic designation of the State Farm Building at 112 East Washington. Would the city like to report a little bit on where we're at in terms of status and sort of what our next step is?
Thank you, Paul. Exactly. So per the ordinance, the Preservation Commission is tasked with passing a resolution and a report with their decision to the Planning Commission. After you act, there is a turnaround time of, I believe it's 7 days that we have to make sure that this gets to the commission. The next step for the Planning Commission then is to hold a public hearing on the requested nomination and to review the information that you've provided, that the commission has provided. So we would be looking at publishing the public hearing in the newspaper at least 15 days in advance. We would probably be looking at February 22nd for a Planning Commission date. And then after Planning Commission, the recommendation goes to the City Council for final action. So the report, as we discussed last time, should contain a number of bullet points and detail. And I have a draft here that staff prepared based on the conversation last time and looking at the meeting minutes. And I can pull that up on the screen if you'd like, Chairperson Charnett. And then if there are any edits that the commission feels should be made to this report before taking action, we can use track changes and show those edits in real time for the commission. And then if you feel comfortable acting on it tonight, like I said, then we would be looking at sending that to the Planning Commission for the 22nd. So
I think that would be an excellent way to proceed this evening. I will say that Greg and I met and we reviewed a little bit of the information that was appropriate, as we discussed we would last time. So we have just some commentary, but I think this can be voted on this evening pretty easily if everyone else in the commission is comfortable with it, of course. But we have a few changes and we can share those with you. And as a matter of fact, we have specific text that we've sort of identified, but we'd love everybody else to be able to see that. And as you suggested, tracking those changes on the screen would be perfect. So without further ado, let's proceed.
Chairperson Charnett, I also, if it's okay, I'd like to just add that we did receive some feedback from the property owner that they have reviewed it and generally are in agreement with it. There's just a question about the sign and the typeface as well as the future location of the sign. So just wanted you to be aware of that.
Is Mr. Arduino on the call?
He is not at the moment. We can try to get a hold of him, George.
Do you know if he was intending on being on, or if he's been sent anything, or?
He's reviewed the staff report, and we've sent the contact or the call-in information, but at the moment it does not look like he's joined the meeting. So, if you would like us to reach out and try to get a hold of him, we can do that. But I think he has the information and could participate or call in.
Okay.
Okay, well, I did not have any issues with the first page. Moving on to the second page, and I trust everyone has read this information, so we can kind of skip ahead and move forward. The year built, we actually believe that that's a pretty defined year of 1928, and then 1947, of course, the addition. So we looked at that and just said we should probably make that correction. And then moving on down to the Exhibit B report information, where we go to height, and I don't have a page number for that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Paul, just one, Chairperson Charnett, one quick question. For the year built, do you want it, 1928 through 1947, or would you like it 1928 and then the addition was built in 1947?
I think
Well,
1920.
there are changes through a number of years. So I think if you stated it 1928-1947, it would cover the variety of permutations that it was in.
Okay.
I would concur with that if everyone's amicable.
Yep.
Yeah, Exhibit B is not paginated, so.
Okay, so we talked about a number of things that would affect height, particularly the HVAC that might be on the building if that were to change at some point in time, and whether that would restrict anything on the appearance from the street part of that. And ultimately, we moved that to the roof portion of it. So we'll come back to that. So then moving to exterior openings, we had a couple of comments. And particularly that where we talk about the commission concluded that permitting some modifications to the ground floor entrances could be appropriate as long as the modifications fit with the original decorative openings. We wanted to just clarify that a little bit more, that those openings would be the dolomite window surrounds, which must be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Technology here. So do you have specific language? Would you like it to say modifications fit within the original decorative openings, such as the dolomite window surrounds, or how would you like that edited?
I'm suggesting as long as the modifications fit within the original dolomite window surrounds, which must be maintained.
Yeah, the precision of the language is to emphasize that a entrance modification would have to actually fit the size that would fit within the dolomite window surround. It's a way of keeping the symmetry of the building maintained, as well as maintaining the dolomite window surrounds, which are called out as a important feature.
Mhm.
I apologize in advance. You're going to see in real time my horrible spelling. So please feel free to correct me.
All good. We are all in the same boat. Didn't have a whole lot of commentary on proportions of windows and doors. We did have some discussion about whether we should get into more of the articulation about muntins and mullions and some of that, but ultimately discussed that if they wanted to do operable windows or wanted to address those features a little bit differently, it would not be a major distraction as long as those existing openings are retained. And then moving to relationship of building masses and spaces, there's not so much you can do about this. So it's kind of what it is. Okay, the big piece here is about roof shape. And we wanted to just change roof shape, the heading to just roof.
Okay.
And really, because there are qualities of the roof that are more than just the shape, there's character and massing, et cetera. And particularly, we believe that, and I'm speaking for you, Greg, sorry.
I've got language that we wrote. So the language would be to insert the statement, and it could go at the end of the paragraph of 5. This would be, quote, care must be taken for roof-mounted mechanical systems, comma, so as to minimize impact on the overall appearance of the structure.
Yeah, so the intent there is, of course, that if we see replacement happening in the future or some of these systems, that they're not drowning out the roof, the beautiful features of the roof, some of those windows, some of the patina that we're seeing up there that are so dominant in the skyline. That's really the gist of it, our heart in all of this.
Makes sense.
Any others that anyone else saw that we might want to add to that? Okay, well then we'll move on to landscaping. We actually just said landscaping is not a feature of the site, and just getting rid of the whole paragraph just to say landscaping is not a feature of the site, so that it's sort of recorded that it would be defined. This isn't a feature, and it's not going to continue to be a feature because we're lot line to lot line. We did talk about if there are some landscaping furnishings, but I don't know that any of that would actually be on the lot, so we wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And then kind of moving on to scale, there was an item here.
The last clause, and
Yes.
character and with surrounding structure and historic, compatible with its architectural style and character and with surrounding structures in historic district. The structures in a surrounding district are there's a huge variety of buildings in a surrounding district of different styles. And so reflecting those variety of styles simply doesn't make any sense here. So we thought it could drop the phrase and character and with surrounding structures in a historic district.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that we just sort of put a period after architectural style,
Yep.
because it is all about this is the building that we're trying to be responsible for, not all of the other buildings around it are trying to match those specific components.
Yep.
And I would add too, when you start to make something that's compatible, compatible is not necessarily that you can't do something that's different. It's respectful of the original structure. Okay, and then we moved on to directional expression. So I think this was the biggest point Mr. Aduno was making. And I concur that typeface could be easily stricken from that. From the sign, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, that's further down. Okay, my apologies. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Point 8.
Yeah, point 7, 8, 9, and 10 here. The building's primary entrances are on Washington Street, and that's 1928, and Jefferson Street, 1947.
I think I was thinking of the government center when I was writing this. Okay.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
1947. There we go. All right.
Perfect. Thank you. And then moving down to sign, just deleting typeface. And the reasoning was I think when we talked about this previously in our last conversation was exactly Mr. Aduno's argument that other companies would come in and they may have a very different symbolism that they want to apply to it. But the material character and scale were elements that are architectural in nature, and they do have impact on the visual quality of the building behind it. So that was our argument with this. And of course, those things are left open to interpretation. So it would be before the commission to also agree on whatever those might be, or whatever sign might be appropriate for it, as well as to the planning commission or whoever else might be approving it.
Okay. And I've stricken typeface, added scale, and then I just wanted to clarify about the second to last sentence here about the location. Would something more appropriate be to just ensure that any future location is not obstructing architectural features? Or what is the commission's thought on that?
Well, I would certainly open that up to the commission for conversation, but I will introduce one thought. This sign has historically been there, and it's been historically in this location because it is the most blank spot on the building to do so. And it would be very difficult to place something of this size and scale and character elsewhere. And I would add that because this sign is there, if we were to move it anywhere else, I don't know that as a commission I would feel comfortable protecting any other space, that only this space would seem to me to be the one that is the protected part.
I would also, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Two pieces that I look at on this. One is that the scale of the historic sign is likely out of sync with the city sign code. I'm going to guess that it is. I don't know for sure. I'm guessing that it is, but would be defensible in that scale as not necessarily a replica of usage of that space as it was intended. So in essence, I think it would be make it easier for that to fit the current sign code. I think there could be another problem, and it's too bad Mr. Adorno isn't here to talk about this a little more, and that is, I think he probably is interested in what kind of signage can be done on the ground floor level. If there were, let's say there are, I see that he's put up something that looks like it might be kind of an inexpensive building directory thing on the outside of the building. That he's probably looking for some way that it can at least tell people these are the businesses that are within.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually an issue, if you will. And I don't know whether it would be appropriate for us to suggest that some consideration would be given to signage that would occupy the space within the dolomite surrounds of existing windows.
Yeah, that would be a good usage of that space, probably.
That was actually going to be my question too, as far as allowing signage anywhere else on the exterior of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that if there are signs that would go elsewhere on the building, they might be left to decision at a later date. But this specific area of the building with its signage, you could still put something that has the same scale back. Same kind of character, same material. You could, if it said Kepler up there, for instance, and it's a giant typeface, something that's still within the bounds of that box, as it were. I think that could still work. But to put 5 signs up there, for instance, that have small indicators to say, okay, well, you could do this or this or this. I don't know that I would feel really comfortable with that in that kind of scale. I think that would be very distracting from the original building.
Yeah.
And anything else that would go on the building, I guess I would, my leaning is toward saying, well, signs are not really our prerogative. It would be the zoning.
I think that the location of signs, when we have so much decorative material that we're trying to preserve, that is integral to the quality of the building, I think we really should have a weigh-in on signs.
Do we prepare that weigh-in on signs now, or is that something that we would say on a case-by-case basis, as they wanted to apply a sign, we would review that as a commission?
So if I can add just a comment, I think explaining the historical significance of the large exterior sign could be important if the property owner needed to seek a variance or needed to get relief. So I think that part could be important to state. And then, there's a few options. I mean, this is a Rust grant property, so any future grants pertaining to signs could come before the commission. And then also with the S4 zoning overlay, the certificate of appropriateness would come back before the commission. So I do think, in the future, you'll have opportunities to discuss in more detail, and just with a lot of unknowns at the moment, in terms of what's planned, it might be kind of hard to create that specific information.
Should it be, would it be appropriate then to have a sentence in there that says additional signage would be reviewed by the Preservation Commission?
Yeah, I think you could do that. And so, to the applicant or to the property owner's concern about the location, the specific language pertaining to the location of the larger sign on the facade, I'm wondering if it would be maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, Greg and Paul and everybody else on the commission. So maybe it might be important to say the sign should be placed generally in the same location, and then, or as reviewed with the certificate of appropriateness. And then also, you could also add your sentence, Greg, about future signage would be reviewed with the certificate of appropriateness.
I think I could be comfortable with some sort of review in the future. My thought is that the same general location probably makes sense. But part of our argument last time and our discussion last time was that one of the reasons that the signage was there was because it was up high, it was sufficient in size that you could even see it from the highway, and represents something of a topping out or a crown to Bloomington. So there's something to be said for that if we were to slide that thing down on the building, yes, more people might see it on the street, but I don't know that that would be appropriate from historic context.
I would agree with that, Paul.
It looks like Mr. Arduino might be able to join us, so we'll hold on just a moment.
So Mr. Arduino is on the line, but Phil, I don't have the permission to allow him to speak at the moment.
We still need to get that from IT or something?
Do you have that, Kimberly? I think we've all been demoted here. Oh, here we go. One second. There we go. One second.
This is Jeff.
Oh, good. Hello, Jeff. George.
Hey, George. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. And you?
Good. How are you? Is everybody there good?
Yes, we are. Jeff, can you hear us all?
I can.
Thank you, Mr. Arduino. We are going to have a little bit more discussion. We're sort of at a point where we're discussing sign. Do we need to have him sworn in, Katie?
I guess I'll defer to George on that.
At this point, I don't know that there's testimony going on. So I think at this point, why don't we're all just kind of discussing things. So I'm not sure that that's necessary. It's not a
Okay, that sounds
hearing
good.
in that regard.
Mr. Arduino, we were discussing the sign in particular, and we were striking the phrase typeface. I don't know if you've had a chance to review the report in full.
I did, and I told Katie that was my only concern about it because I don't know what Kepler Vision would want to do, and that's just I'm just kind of trying to look ahead here for everybody's sake, and that was it. So if you strike the word typeface, I think material, character, and scale and size are probably, to even have something you'd see from the ground, even adjacent to the building, would have to be about all of those things. So, yeah, I think that's fine. I think that clarifies probably the only thing I was worried about.
Well, great. The other item that we were just discussing was the same general location. We were suggesting that if we moved that sign further down on the building, we didn't think that would be appropriate because this has been historically so tall, so high up on there, so that it had the visibility in its primary location where it is. So if we were to slide something down, or if you had, say, 3 or 4 tenants that wanted to put big signs up there, it wouldn't work. It would have to be, something that was one large sign.
I've got to be honest. I think the sign would have to go on top of the building anyway, because I don't think anybody would want to try and affix it to the masonry. So I don't really have a problem with that. I think that makes total sense. So yeah, no issue with that. I guess I don't know if the side of the building, because I think there was some concern about what side of the building it was on. And I don't know why somebody would have a different preference, but I guess I can't rule out that they might. And so that maybe that, but as far as being on the rooftop deck, I think that's probably where it would go.
Well, and our thought too is that there will of course be other signs that you're going to want to put on the building. You might have a primary sign. This would be primary, I assume. And then there would be some secondary signs, maybe in the windows or affixed somehow. And our suggestion with that is that we would just review those with certificate of appropriateness
Sure.
at the time that those came up, rather than try to define whatever those characteristics are now. It'd be so difficult to do so.
Yeah, no, let's take it case by case. I agree with that.
Excellent. So Katie, would you mind just adding a sentence here to that effect? Sure. So we were saying additional signs would be subject or to be subject to review by the Preservation Commission on a case-by-case basis.
I think that's fine. I mean, I can envision, just for everybody's sake, looking forward, maybe a small pylon sign or pylon signs outside the corners of the doors on the ground floor. But I think we bring those, and those would be subject to approval by various means anyway. But just I could see those on the horizon. So I think, frankly, are more likely than other signs apart from the primary sign on top of the building.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense.
Does the word review indicate that an action would come from review? You can have a review of something without taking an action. So should there be an action word? Should it be additional signs to be subject to approval by the Preservation Commission on a case-by-case basis?
I think that makes sense, Greg. And would that, Katie, would that then fall under a certificate of appropriateness?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think approval is exactly the right word. And when we have a certificate of appropriateness, that's our document.
Okay.
Cool. Good.
And then I had only one other item, and that's fluorescent is FLUOR. And if there's any other discussion items, I would certainly entertain that from any other commissioners. Okay, then, y'all, are we ready for a vote on this?
I know there were a number of things that were discussed. Is there any way to summarize those briefly, if there's anything more substantive that Mr. Arduino may have missed earlier in the meeting? I know we can't repeat the whole meeting verbatim, and not trying to bog things down.
George, I kind of assume everything tracked with what's in the proposed findings from Katie. Is that fair?
I think it is, but I just want to make sure that.
No, we had just a couple of statements to clarify. One was that modifications for the ground floor entrances would need to be kept within the dolomite window surrounds, which have to be maintained. So the entry work would have to be done within those dolomite surrounds.
Sure.
We added to the item 5 on the roof, and with a statement that care must be taken for roof-mounted mechanical systems so as to minimize the impact on the overall appearance of the structure.
Makes sense.
And on landscaping, we simply stated landscaping is not a feature of this site.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. No argument there.
And then in scale of building, we cut the phrase "and character and with the surrounding structures in a historic district" because the surrounding structures are not in the same style. So it just didn't make any sense.
Okay, all right.
And we corrected a couple of errors of address.
All right. Well then, hey, this all sounds fine.
Perfect. Perfect.
One suggestion I would make is just to add at the beginning, there's a cite to the Bloomington City Code, and I just say Chapter 44, section. I'm getting it in front of me here, but it's in the first sentence or so, and then just say the Bloomington City Code at the end of the sentence. I think it just refers to the section only.
George, is this before, is this after number 10 of the
It's in the report. Hang on a second now.
Is this where it's saying section 44.8-4?
Yes,
Under HPC recommendation.
right. Let's do that.
Oh, sorry, 1 second.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's in the box there. Yeah, took me a while to find it.
So the revision
Yeah,
now,
Third
Uh,
line.
George, is that we would say to meet the requirements of Chapter 44, Section 44.8-4 of the Bloomington City Code. Is that what you were
That's
after?
correct. Yes. And then just with respect to the draft resolution, the final whereas would put a period instead of the semicolon and take the and off. Delete the and. I feel like I'm taking a page out of Sherry's book here.
That's okay, George. It's okay. We work together on this commission.
Are you able to see the draft resolution on my screen, Paul? No? Okay. Let me pull that one up too in case there's any other corrections.
Did anyone else have any corrections for the draft resolution?
No. I think we're good.
George, you said on the second whereas,
The final whereas,
final whereas.
the one just before the resolving language.
Remove the and add a period.
Okay, then with those changes made, could we have a motion to approve this resolution
I
And-
approve.
and Exhibit B?
I make a motion that we approve this resolution as amended.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's have a vote, please.
Mr. Coos,
Yes.
Ms. Grayling,
Yes.
Ms. Peters,
Yes.
and Chairperson Charnett.
Yes, the motion passes.
Yay.
It's only been a year and some in the making.
I know.
This will go to the Planning Commission on February, the second meeting in February, which is I'm sorry, just lost my calendar.
Let's see.
The 24th. I think I said 22nd earlier. 24th.
Okay, that closes that portion. So we will now move on to old business, if there is any.
I guess this would be under old business. It's something we haven't gotten done, and we haven't done anything with it. And I brought this up to the attention of this commission at our November 2020 meeting. And that is, has to do with the discrimination inherent in the Funk grant guidelines as they currently stand, which prohibit people from seeking grant money for materials if they are making the repairs on their own buildings, yet the buildings are not those that they reside in. So the requirement for the payment of prevailing wages to be eligible to be considered for a grant request, I believe, should be waived in such cases. And if we can't do anything about this today and it has to actually be placed on the agenda, I submit a request right now to have this matter placed on our next meeting agenda.
Would it be possible, Sherry, for you to propose language change?
I'm not sure what the actual thing actually states right now, because at the beginning, when I first was a member of this commission, we didn't have a problem with this. And then at some point, the people that I've talked with who are in this position to be owners of buildings that they do not reside in, and yet they do make their own repairs, have reported to me that they are not allowed to actually, that when they try to submit a request for a certificate of to have a case submitted so that they can actually do the work, that it was thrown out. It was never allowed in front of us on the commission. So because they kept saying, why haven't I seen anything on this? And I'm like, I never saw it. So I know it used to be that we did allow that, and then it changed. And I don't think any of us, at least I was never told that the change was made. And I think it came within the staff situation. And I know who probably started this, but I'm not sure. That it seemed to go along with while one of the people was employed by the city who no longer is, and under that person's time, it changed.
Well, I concur that we should definitely open that up for discussion. Without the language in front of us, I think it would be very difficult to make any
Right. I agree.
any formidable discussion on it tonight. So
I'd like to have it placed on with the discussion, or with the language that actually exists right now, and maybe a copy of something that's existed in the past before that was changed. It would be great to have that in our packets so we can look at that. And then on the agenda to be actually discussed at our next meeting.
You might be looking for a change in language that may not exist. There may be no change in language. It sounds to me as if there's a change in interpretation of language.
You may be right. I think it is an interpretation. But at any rate, somebody along the way who had the power to either allow it to be presented to us as a commission or did something. And that's why we did it. And I would
could be clarified. And so if we could get the language in front of us, we can work to clarify.
And maybe the best resolution is to put a formal bullet in the language to say that this shall not mean that you can't do such and such and such.
Right.
Yes. Be very open to that.
I have a question since I wasn't here in November. Is that like any non-owner occupied work on any non-owner occupied building, or is that like what is the specific
what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's just say that I am a master carpenter, and I have been buying buildings, and I've been renting out apartments in them and doing all the work on them myself. Okay. But I have an old building that I live in, and I keep that up as well. So that's my building that I live in. It's my residence. All of these other buildings I do own, but I don't reside in any of them. And so what we have in the past allowed is a person who is in that situation to be able to fix up their property and not have to worry about meeting the prevailing wage business, because absolutely they're not going to pay themselves to do the woodworking or whatever it is that they're doing. They may have another person that they hired and they pay them prevailing wage, but they don't have to pay their own prevailing wage. And see, that's the problem. Those people have been kind of eliminated from the stack of applications.
So they're turning in an application, say, just for materials, and
Yeah.
that's not being approved or passed along to the commission?
That is what has been happening.
Okay.
This was brought to my attention, and it was because of the fact that they couldn't and wouldn't pay prevailing wage. It's like, if you don't pay prevailing wage, then you just can the whole thing, which
Yeah.
I don't happen.
You'd have to set up a shell company just to make it work.
So what about like a homeowner? Like I don't know, it's been a while since I've taken advantage of the grant. Like if I had zoning S4 and I came for a grant and I'm doing the work myself and I'm just petitioning for the materials?
If you're living in it, it's one thing. If you're not living in it is where the problem is. So you own your building that you live in, and next door you've got one that you don't live in, but you've got 2 apartments or 4 apartments or whatever. That's the situation.
Terry, are you in favor of the prevailing wage being a requirement in anything?
I am in favor of a prevailing wage being required if.
I would like to see us move this conversation to the next meeting, because
Okay.
we're getting into the bushes now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would concur with that. And I will add one component to this, in that residential and commercial are 2 different things when we're dealing with some of this. So the prevailing wage, I think, only applies to the commercial side, if I'm recalling correctly.
We'll add this to the agenda.
Yeah,
I think
right.
there's some additional staff research that would need to happen to inform the conversation, especially pertaining to our procurement policy.
Isn't a,
Right.
excuse me, apartment building then considered commercial?
Let's
Yes.
put it on the agenda.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll discuss further next time.
I think
Okay.
this just gives us a good framework though, so I can, kind of know what we're talking about at least and be prepared for the next meeting. So.
Okay. Well, good. I just wanted to get it on, I wanted to get it out there so that we can get it on the agenda.
Very good. Well, thank you very
Is-
much. Is there any?
With regard to
other-
the research and so on, Katie, is that going to be something staff can do for the next meeting, or does it need to be? Katie's got a pretty small division there, consisting.
Caitlin is pretty awesome, though. I mean, she is really doing a lot of work. We will do our best. George, I appreciate the thought, because we really do need to be sure that we're providing accurate information regarding the procurement policy that the city has, because
Right.
we will definitely have something on the agenda, but whether or not we'll be able to take action, or whether or not we will need to table it to get additional information, that will be determined later.
Okay.
Does that sound okay? But we'll definitely get the guidelines out there for you, and so you can start looking at them as well.
Okay. I just think it's been interpreted differently. I think that was what Greg really said. It was a place where we were, and then all of a sudden we weren't. And I don't know.
Oh, that's great feedback. That's something that we can include in our research, is kind of a history of past cases as well, and what we've done in the last I don't know. We'll definitely try to get you a report, but I've already added this to the agenda. So.
Thank you.
Cool.
I greatly.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there any other old business?
No.
Okay, well then with new business, we have here for the election of vice chair. However, there are only 4 of us here. And we couldn't actually vote on one without somebody having, it doesn't work. We won't have a quorum to be able to vote. While eliminating it, yeah. So I propose that we move this to the next agenda.
I think that's a great idea.
All right. Then we will move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Did we
So
need
moved.
to remove that?
Yeah, you could do a motion to table to a date certain, but you know.
Okay, I move that we move the election of vice chair to the next meeting.
Can we also tack on that we move to adjourn as well after this?
That has to be,
a compound motion. Huh? I had no problem with it.
I'm sorry. No,
Can I
I
get a
just,
second?
I made the motion to move the election of vice chair to the next meeting. So I think I need a second, right?
Yeah, and I think Paul wanted to add the adjournment to that motion as well. Is that correct?
I think he wanted to. Is that okay?
It would take a motion by the committee of the whole referred to the motion subcommittee on other motions.
Oh, boy.
So I'll entertain both motions. There are 2 motions on the floor. Let's get a second
Okay.
for both of them.
Okay.
All right. If you want,
Both of them.
I don't care. I'm willing to say we adjourn after that, so. But we still need a second.
I'm seconding both of them. So
Thank you.
All right.
All right, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
All right.
Mr. Coos,
Yes.
Ms. Grayling,
Yes.
Ms. Peters,
yes.
and Chairperson Charnett.
Yes, this meeting
Hey.
is adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's always good seeing you.
Nice to see you too.